see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this.
Oh, I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face.
Oh, I'm from Brooklyn.
Hey, get us any.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
What's up, everybody? It's another episode of Coast to Coast. I am your host, Pags. Obviously, the new man in the middle for this upcoming week. We got Jay, who actually shows up on time, and we got Stat Guy as well. He's joining us today. How you guys doing today?
Well, I'm certainly doing better than Texas was doing when Texas Tech University started throwing bottles at them on the court. What a way to go out, Texas Tech. Good.
Wow, that's a great way of starting there too. Is that what happened? What, yesterday?
I didn't get the exact day of it, but it's very, very recent. Like as of, well, this was put out yesterday, or it's put on the 28th. So yeah, it must have been yesterday. Texas beat Texas Tech, and so Texas Tech responded by throwing bottles on the court at them. Keep it classy, Lubbock.
There you go. And Stat Guy, my man. Tell everybody about yourself, obviously, because you're new here.
Yeah, so the name is Dustin Reese, but people call me Stat Guy. I've known Jay for probably 3 years now, so we work kind of together on the Elite Sports and Entertainment Network. I cover the Chicago Bulls, Chicago Bears, and Chicago Cubs for one of my jobs, and do a lot of other writing gigs on the side as well.
Nice. Awesome. Well, welcome. Happy to have you here. Like I said, if I know you with your stats is all perfect there. Right? So he's going to bring a lot to the show and help us out this week while Bo is in Hawaii working on his tan. So God bless. They get to go on vacation. So anyways, you know what? I was going to go ahead. We talked about this, and we might as well bring it on up right now. Obviously, we're talking about Jefferson. And possibly get him getting traded or him not wanting to re-sign and such like that. And yesterday we were talking about how the running backs right now are going to be like way too much, like are not going to get paid enough. That's what I think. That the price tag is going to go. What do you think is going to raise? What type of position is getting paid more money now because of that? Because obviously when they're taking the money away from running back, I know some goes to the quarterback, but now other positions are going to be making more money. Out of all the positions besides quarterback, are they spending enough money or too much money now on wide receivers? Do these wide receivers really deserve $20+ million to be part of the offense?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? I mean, I always thought the two biggest guys on the team are your defensive captain, which is typically sometimes your linebacker or your defensive end, and then your quarterback. Those are your key areas. And then, but when you start looking at the offense, if you get outside the offensive line, then you really are talking. But it's got to be that one guy that it's got to be like a Tyreek Hill, or it's got to be like a Justin Jefferson or a Cooper Kupp. Those are the kind of guys I think you spend money on. The ones that really change the team, not the ones that are, in that middle area, right? So I think you spend it wisely. If it's a game-changing guy, yeah, I think he's going to get the Quan. That guy?
Yeah, I agree. I think wide receivers, for the most part, are paid more than what they should get paid. But when you have a guy like Tyreek Hill, who there's nobody else in the league like him when it comes to his speed, he's worth what he's getting paid. You look at what Justin Jefferson has done his first 4 NFL seasons, where he's basically set every single wide receiver record you can think of. I think he's worth what he's going to get paid. But the one position that I really think is going to start getting paid is the edge rush. Because now now you see all these teams that are kind of going with like the Danielle Hunters, going with the Khalil Macks, and kind of those players that are too big to be a linebacker but too small to be a defensive lineman, but they're pass rushing specialists. With this league becoming a pass first league, you're going to want to start paying those pass rushing specialists to get after the quarterback.
So with the increase, I know that because the Eagles always spent money there. That was one of the things that we did was our defensive line, our offensive and defensive line. Of course, a couple years ago when we went to the Super Bowl, we were getting to the quarterback at a record pace. Last year, we couldn't get really any pressure whatsoever because they just beat us by doing the quick release, quick pass. You get coming some of those quick ones, or you have our edge rushers going out into coverage, which is ridiculous as well. So, but I just kind of think about that. The wide receivers that you mentioned are, again, all pro wide receivers.
Right.
When you go with like a Valdez Scantling, which is what really started the conversation, how he's getting dropped and that they're saving $14 million by dropping him. I don't think he was worth $14 million. He just won a Super Bowl, though.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, you can't take that away from him. But I don't know. I watched those playoff games, too. There was a lot of drops. You know what I mean? There was a lot of
it was.
So,
That's the thing, though. I don't know if you give a third option receiver, wide receiver one money. And that's really kind of what we're talking about is the wide receiver ones really deserve it. The wide receivers 2s and 3s, your third options, they really don't. If you want to put the money anywhere outside of a wide receiver one, I'd probably put it in the tight end. If we're talking about pass catching people, because really the tight end now is starting to become more of a utilized weapon in the short game, or just right across the middle as a security blanket to some of these quarterbacks. So if I was going to go put the money in the wide receiver one, I'd definitely put it in the tight end. But Pags, even you and I know, we talked about this yesterday. Your offensive line, man, you got to put that money in that offensive line, man. That really is your bread and butter. If you don't have the right guys in that personnel, it really doesn't matter what you put on the outside. As flashy as it is, and I know the wide receiver is a flashy position to put money into. Without those workhorses, those Clydesdales down in front, those flashy things don't really get utilized a whole hell of a lot.
With the exception being Joe Burrows. You know what I mean?
What you were saying about the tight end, though, Jay, outside of Hawkinson, Kittle, Kelsey, and Mark Andrews, are there really any tight ends that are worth $10 million a year?
Because I think Dalton Schultz is in there.
Dalton Schultz with Houston, yes, but you really don't have many tight ends that are going to be kind of like that number one option when it comes to receiving wise. Most of the tight ends are for run blocking. They're possession receivers that'll move the chains. Right. But there's really only 5 tight ends that I would consider game-breaking, game-changing tight ends that deserve the kind of money that Kelsey and Kittle and Andrews get.
Yeah, but what I do think about that, I'm going to answer that before you do, Jay, is that the tight end position is the modern-day fullback as well. Mm-hmm. That's what the tight end has become because he's always put into motion and he's going to be either closing off the edge or, being like the lead blocker in some cases for the running backs. So there's a lot of different ways that position has become the new fullback position. So ultimately, that's why I think that even a mediocre tight end could make more money. Because if you are able to block, maybe you don't have the best of hands or not maybe you probably have sure hands. It's just that you got to go right down because most of these people, the problem is they don't know how to carry the ball and they get that ball knocked away. That's the reason why most tight ends don't get the ball thrown to them because they fumble. So
the thing too, I think is, it's only right. And again, the tight end position in my mind in this league is becoming a growing position, right? In other words, it used to be, Tony Gonzalez with the Chiefs, Witten, Novacek, with the Cowboys. And then now you got Tom Brady, was one of the other quarterbacks that utilized the tight end a lot. Now Patrick Mahomes clearly is utilizing the tight end a lot. But, you have to have a quarterback that is willing to use that security blanket and willing to give him the ball to do that. And if you look at Ferguson. Ferguson sat behind, what's his name, Dalton Schultz for a hot minute out there in Dallas. And then once Schultz went to Houston, now look at Ferguson. I guarantee that guy's got a hell of a lot of receiving yards. Yeah. A lot of receiving yards. Only because Dak made him that way. And a lot of these quarterbacks just don't use the tight end as much as the select few that really make these other guys known, right?
Well, I know about the tight end because the tight end is typically the killer for the Eagles again with Dallas. We have been killed versus tight ends a lot with Dallas. Schultz, same situation. Novacek before him, and I mean, yeah, that's always been a thorn in our side, and it doesn't matter who it was. And the Giants kind of used the same situation when the Giants used to beat us. It was always the tight end.
They always had Jeremy Shockey, who was kind of the first of that stretch the field tight end.
Yeah, he was. But Mark Bavaro was also a really good tight end who they really only utilized him in certain situations because they needed to have their release because we could get to the quarterback pretty quickly. So that was kind of the way they did it back then. They just kind of got it over, the rusher's hands, and we were able to knock it out. And he just would kill us all the time.
And Bo mentioned it yesterday when we talked about Jimmy Graham. When Jimmy was down there with Drew Brees in New Orleans, he was doing great things at that tight end spot. I mean, he was making a great name for himself. He goes out to Seattle, and Russell and Gino and company did not use him for a damn bit, and then he kind of just faded out a little bit. So it really depends on the quarterback and how much they're willing to use these tight ends and get them the ball, because there's lots of good tight ends out there, and that tight end is a great position when you utilize it, Pags. And Pags, we're talking about the fullback spot. I mean, you can utilize them a bunch of different ways, really. Taysom Hill is another great example of how you can utilize a tight end in different spots, different aspects.
I think one thing you're going to start seeing too, which could affect the tight end market too, is I think you're going to start seeing a lot more teams do what Buffalo does with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, where you have Dalton Kincaid as kind of your stretch to field tight end to get you the yards. But then you have Dawson Knox, who's more of your block first and kind of your red zone threat. So you might have a tight end that's getting you a lot of yards and not a lot of touchdowns. Then you might have that secondary tight end that's getting you more touchdowns and less yards just because of the way they line them up.
I see Bo's chiming in, but Jimmy couldn't block it all. Bo, I hope you're using that SPF 150 we talked about. I don't want you coming back all splotchy with skin cancer.
I just hope that there's not enough rain, or there's not too much rain that they can't take off. I gotta imagine he's at the airport right now. He ain't in Hawaii
that's
just
right.
yet.
Yeah, you're right. He's at the airport.
It's way early in the morning over there, so they might just be getting started.
Make sure you stretch the legs, Bo. It's a long time in that seat.
I guess it's not too bad from over there. What's that got to be, like 7-hour, 10-hour flight?
I don't know.
It's already the flight delay. There we go. So. Hey, feel free to chime in then if you want to come on in. Let's go. I knew that's the hard part. You got to deal with the weather up there in Seattle. So, but so as we're talking about the different money that teams spend and such like that, the Eagles, for instance, don't spend any money on linebackers. Right. And typically that's a weakness. You know what I mean? That's one of our weaknesses is the linebackers most of the time.
Yeah, and Jerry, I hope he spends the money. I hope he spends the money on Michael Parsons.
I don't have one yet. I'll be down there soon. I don't have my spring trading hat on yet. That's coming though. It's definitely coming.
I'll tell you what he does have on: a few pillows behind that back.
Right now, and some ice, because I tell you, it's still not 100% yet, but. They said it's going to take a little bit. That's fine. But anyways, like I said, we don't spend any money on the linebacker position. No. So, I mean, if with that, obviously, then you got to spend the money on the cornerbacks. You got to make sure that the cornerbacks can cover, you know what I mean, are able to get interceptions, and that your defensive line gets into the quarterback. So if you're going to spend that type of money, that's where I kind of think it should go. However, you can't just let the middle wide open.
Yeah, well, now that they've gone to this 4-3, it seems like a lot more of these linebackers, like I use Michael Parsons' example, TJ Watt is another one, that are starting to take over, some of these captain roles and starting to play the guy that calls the plays on defense. They should put money in those kind of guys. I don't know if every linebacker you're putting money into, but the ones that are special, like a Watt, a Parsons, and or like, way back in the day, those guys, they're special ones you put money into. And hopefully Jerry will not be cheap, and he'll actually give Micah that money he deserves.
So, well, hopefully. But I think he also wants to become an Eagle. I know that he says no. But I think that he really likes it here in Philly. So
He don't like that.
he's always
weather.
giving
wants to
Philly.
stay
He's
down in
always giving
Dallas.
Philly some love. He comes to Sixers games and stuff like that. So, I think that there's a possibility there. So do you watch any of as I'm going to talk to stat guy here for a second. Do you watch any of spring training? Do you
I
go
watch
through that?
I watch every single spring training game start to finish.
Gotcha. And how do you think your Cubs are going to look this year?
A lot better now that they got Bellinger, but I still think there is some question marks that need to be addressed. I would have liked them to get another starting pitcher because Kyle Hendricks is in the final year of his contract, so now you're running into next offseason with who's going to replace Hendricks. You still have some rookies in that rotation who are unproven. I mean, Shota Imanaga is supposed to be good, but he's still a Japanese pitcher coming to the American side for the first time, so you can expect him to struggle a little bit this year. There's questions in the bullpen. There's still some questions with the lineup, but the team is loaded with prospects, and that's kind of the one thing that they're kind of banking on. And I always try to caution a lot of Cubs fans, basically saying, yes, we have prospects. Yes, we won the World Series with prospects before, but they're still just prospects. They're not all going to pan out. You never know how they're going to pan out until they get to the show, but you can't put all your ducks in a row and count on these prospects to lead you. You still need some of those veteran presence in that lineup to help you.
Yeah, because it's hard to find that unless somebody's going to really try to step up. Obviously, with the Phillies, it's simple. It's really Harper's. That's Harper's clubhouse, so that makes that real easy. You think Bellinger's going to be that guy?
I think Bellinger and Dansby both, because both of them kind of have that longevity when it comes to the playoff experience, because being with the Braves and Dodgers, they were constantly in the playoffs. They've both been the World Series before. They both won the World Series before, so they kind of have that veteran leadership role. They kind of know what it takes to get to the playoffs, what it takes to get to the World Series. And now it's up to the young guys to kind of take on that mindset. But the one thing that I love, and I always go back to 2016 when the Cubs won the World Series, when those young guys got called up, they didn't know any better. They didn't realize that the Cubs had a 108-year drought. They didn't really care about all the curses that the Cubs were supposedly under. They just went out there and played baseball, and sometimes that is the benefit of having so many prospects, is because they don't know what it's like to win or lose. They're just going up to play fun baseball, and teams that are playing more fun are usually the teams that have more success.
Teams that drink together win together. That is the old adage there, especially when it comes to baseball. Teams that drink together win together.
Hell yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's true, though. By the way, Michael Parsons, now I understand why he has such an affection for Philly. He's actually from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
And he went to Penn State.
So that explains a lot for the Philly love. So I ain't got no hate on Micah. Hey, look, if that's where you're from, hey, it's all good. Just remember where you play for. But
I'm sure he does. That's not the problem there.
No, but yeah, I agree with that whole, that was the thing with the Astros, and I still think that culture is down there with those guys. They like to play with each other. They bonded with each other. Abreu, a lot of those guys are from the DR and those similar places. So they get that brotherhood. Maldonado, I was sad to see him go. I think he went to the Cubs. Am I right? That guy is.
He went to the Cubs in 2021, but now he's with the White Sox.
Or the White Sox. I knew he went to Chicago. Okay, the White Sox. So, yeah, I was sad to see him go because number one, he's a great baseball mind behind the play. The guy's just phenomenal. But number two, he really had a great chemistry and culture. So I think he's going to put a good culture out there with the White Sox. He really has that fun, love of the game attitude, which is infectious.
And kind of what you just said, Jay, like when you look at Houston and when you look at the Cubs from 2011 through about 2015, both of those teams were solely relying on prospects, and they were not winning for about 3 years. And then when you got to 2015, they started to win. What were the two moves that basically put those teams over the top? The Cubs got John Lester, which was basically the veteran presence that clubhouse needed, which was really the guy that had the playoff experience that they needed. And Houston got Justin Verlander. Once those two guys were picked up, is kind of when you saw that culture change for both teams, where yes, they had the prospects, but they finally started to bring the veterans in. And Houston's done a good job of that basically ever since, of keeping that culture going.
Right.
The Cubs kind of went through a mini rebuild when some of those prospects, I think, peaked a little bit too soon and never really adjusted back. But now you're seeing the Cubs try to go back to that by adding guys like Dansby Swanson, adding guys like Cody Bellinger, trying to get that veteran presence back like John Lester was when they initially signed him.
Yeah, definitely, because Houston has at the time had a very young South American pitching influence, right, in their starting lineup. And then we got in Greinke and we got in Verlander, and those two veterans alone really did give those young guys, a lot of help. And they have a really great pitch and developmental staff as well. But that veteran leadership that those two guys, in and of themselves, provided, you're right, it was insurmountable.
So I got a question. Have they announced him yet? Like, has he been announced by the team?
Bellinger?
Yes. Like,
Yes, his press conference is tomorrow. He arrived at the facility today to basically just tell the team he's back, tell the team he's here, and then his press conference is tomorrow.
Are you concerned at all that you may have a little bit of, I'm not going to say disgruntled employee, but somebody who may feel like he's underpaid?
Not at all, because that's why they gave him the 2 option years. He can opt out after year 1 in the deal. If he has another great year like he did last year, he's going to opt out and hit the market again. If he ends up getting hurt, if he ends up kind of having not really a subpar year, but not quite as good of a year as he expected, then he can opt in for year 2 and go from there. So it's one of those deals where $30 million a year I'm okay with. I just didn't want to give him a 7-8 year deal because you still had those 3 years in Los Angeles where he did next to nothing. And I don't want to be tied with a player who, if he's going to perform terribly for 4 years out of a 7-year deal, you become a $120 million paperweight at that point. So if I'm going to have you for 3 years and you struggle, it's only 3 years. And then we can take you from center field, move you to first base because we have Pete Crow Armstrong, who's going to be the center fielder of the future anyways. So at least having him on a short-term deal, he also gives you that flexibility to move around too if need be.
Do you know if he had a no-trade clause in that contract? Does he have a no-trade? Because I'm thinking that even if he didn't pan out, they could always trade him as well. I mean, he still has value.
There's not a no-trade clause in there because of the options. Because it's basically if you want out after year 1, you can go out. If you want out after year 2, you can go out. But if he's going to opt into that 3rd year, they're not going to trade him at that point because chances are if he opts into that 3rd year, 2 things are going to happen. Either A, he's struggling mightily, and that's the only reason why he's staying on the team is just because he's guaranteed to get money that way. Or option B is he's performing so well the Cubs and him worked out a long-term extension to keep him beyond that 3-year deal.
See, and that's where I get a little questionable because obviously that's why you want to see what his demeanor is like. Because that's why I asked if he had spoken yet or not. Because I think that you may want to I would pay a little bit of attention to that, specifically because it was a higher profile thing. And then you have your agent kind of deciding to go say, wah, these teams don't want to pay for players anymore. And using you kind of as that thing, like he's using Snell the same way. I feel like that they are, the market is kind of doing some correcting a little bit. And he now is the poster child for that a little bit.
I'm not worried about it too much just because he said from the beginning he wanted to go to Chicago. But I think what he realized this year when it comes to the market is it's not necessarily that signing players to a long-term deal isn't there because he saw that last year with Xander Bogaerts, Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, and a lot of those deals that were giving out last year. It's more so of what his agent does. Obviously, his agent is trying to get him the most money as possible because that's your job as an agent. But what Scott Boras does is he looks at the year that Cody Bellinger had last year and basically said, this is what my client can do for you. This is the type of player he can be. This is what he's worth because if he does this every year, this is kind of what his market value is. But what Scott Boras fails to do is he fails to look at the whole picture. He fails to look at those 3 years that Bellinger did next to nothing in Los Angeles and basically says, my client was a rookie of the year. My client was an MVP. My client was the defending comeback player of the year. This is what he can do for you. Well, everybody else is looking at those 3 years in Los Angeles. Granted, some of them were injury plagued, but everyone else is looking at his whole body of the work and say, okay, yeah, he's given us 3 good years, but he's also had those 3 crappy years in between. So if I'm basing his success on the 3 good years, yes, then he's worth $30 million. But if I'm basing his success on those 3 bad years, he's worth maybe $5 or $6 million. Average those in the middle, that's an $18 million a year player. So Boras needs to kind of start understanding that teams are now going to value players based on their entire body of work, not just on the success they're coming off of on that contract.
What they should be doing, because And especially with age too. I mean, age has to come in to be a factor as well.
Especially with Snell and Montgomery because they're already 32 going on 33. It's not like Bellinger who's 28.
Which is interesting because
Well,
Pags,
yeah.
do you think that right now it's rumored, especially with that contract, that the Yankees are looking at giving Snell? Do you think Snell winds up becoming a Yankees? Do you think it's going to wind up happening?
I'm trying to figure out why it hasn't happened yet.
Because he won't budge from that 9 years at 270, and the Yankees counter was 5 at 150. He's still getting the $30 million a year he wants, but he's not getting the 9 years. He's only getting 5. But I'm like, you're 32 going on 33. Who's going to sign you till you're 42 years old, not knowing how you're going to be when you hit 38?
And why wouldn't you want? Well, I understand he's paying forward is actually what that is. I feel like that he's overvaluing. He's like, hey, if I give you all of my stuff for the next 5 years, that's really worth $270 million.
And again, the same situation there. Blake Snell was terrific this year in San Diego, which is why he won the Cy Young. But in 2021 and 2022, his first 2 years with San Diego, he was the worst starting pitcher in the National League. So what Blake Snell are you going to get? Are you going to get the one that was on a contract year this year that was looking to prove what he was worth? Or are you going to get the Blake Snell that you had the previous 2 years who was a complete liability in the rotation?
That's a hard question to answer. Ultimately, because if you go by the work ethic and the whining, I mean, he's got to be, I guess it's how interested he is to try to get on the field. That's because ultimately he's got to be working out somewhere. That's what I would be doing.
Right.
If you're getting ready to start the pitch, or are you waiting to go in there? Like, are you going in guns a-blazing, or are you going in,
I think
I'm 2 weeks
I
behind.
think he's waiting, and the benefit that Cody Bellinger had too is he lives in Arizona. So he's been working out in Arizona basically since January, basically waiting for a deal to come. So he's actually been at least doing some kind of workouts because he lives kind of in that Arizona area versus Blake Snell doesn't even live in Florida. He doesn't even live in Arizona. So it's not like he's actually at a spring training facilitated area where he's able to do all this kind of work. Yes, he probably does his own stuff, but it's not being able to do the same kind of workouts you would have if you were in the spring training area.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. So like I guess we'll know. I guess we'll find out. The Yankees like to spend money in bad ways, so this wouldn't be the biggest surprise to me. I am doing it for 9 years though. Like in 9 years, he's only been up here in the majors for 3.
No, he's been in the majors for 8. He was with Tampa for 4.5 years, and then he went to San Diego for 3.5. But
yeah, but with Tampa, he was lights out too, though, right? I mean, he's been
not really. His first 2 years in Tampa, he was about a 500 pitcher. Then he won the Cy Young in.
I'm not talking. I don't care about 500. He played for Miami, so
no, he was
I'm thinking what the ERA. The ERA of those years is really what is going to tell me anything.
Yeah, and then his last year in Tampa, he struggled, which is why they traded him, basically. And then his ERA was horrendous the first 2 years in San Diego before this year.
They're getting used to the park. I mean, I don't know that park at all, so I don't know, like sometimes, for instance, that Castellanos, I always kind of feel that when a batter, same thing with Trey Turner, it's a superstitious type of thing that I think about with players. And I think like Trey Turner, for instance, I feel like that he paid for not wearing his hat to the opening press conference. You know what I mean? And he had a really bad, start to the season. And it sounds so weird for me to put those two together, but that's what I did. I was like, you didn't wear the hat on the press conference because you said that your wife, got your hair done for you. Or you're like, well, it was like such a weirdo thing. And I'm like, we just paid you $300 million. Put the friggin' hat on. You know what I mean? Put the hat on.
That sounds like a rich man's answer. I'll tell you though, park really does matter because I'll tell you, if you go down to Minute Maid, which is such a small park, man, you especially on that left field porch, man, like you have to really be a good pitcher because it's so easy to just knock dingers down that left field side and get them out quick.
Yeah, with San Diego, San Diego is one of the toughest parks in baseball to hit home runs out of. It is a pitcher's park, and Blake Snell's ERA at San Diego was a 5.23.
I think Coors Park. Is it Coors with the Rockies? Don't they have a small field as well?
No, they have a big field, but because of the high elevation, balls fly out of there anyways. Like it's nothing. But yeah, Petco Park.
Okay.
Petco Park and Oracle Park in San Francisco are the two hardest parks in baseball to hit home runs out of. And yet Blake Snell's career ERA at Petco Park was like a 5.13. Which
so could you imagine Blake Snell? Right. So could you imagine what Blake Snell, if that's the case there, could you imagine what his ERA would look like if he was pitching for the Stros at Minute Maid?
It'd be about a 7 or 8.
Yeah, it would be blown way out of proportion.
I tell you, and it's like when I think of that team, that San Diego team, they had a lot of inner strife. I'm just, as I think about like what was going on with that, because remember we were reading about how the two superstars were fighting with each other. There was that video that went out in 2021. Yeah. That type of stuff.
Not Soto. It was Tatis was in. Was it Tatis one of the ones that was having
Tatis and Machado?
Yeah, right. It was an ego situation. So like that, I can kind of understand maybe why that team kind of quit on itself. And that ultimately you still got to field the ball. You know what I mean? So
right. That's so much talent to have on one team and not do anything with it. Had that much damn talent was ridiculous. Josh Bell over at first base.
Interestingly enough, that's why Soto played such a big part for them because he was able to kind of quiet them both. It's like, yo, there we go, yo. Chill. You know what I mean? I think he was. I think he was a calming influence to the egos.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, because that's really what it came down to, is that the egos ran that ran that clubhouse.
Yeah. More so, I think Tatis's ego ran that clubhouse just because that guy still has yet to grow up since he signed his $14 million contract.
Well, that team just needs a really strong leader. Like, with the Yankees, when they had brought over A-Rod, there was a lot of ego on that team too, but Jeter was a very strong leader, and he was able to make it work. And that's what the Padres didn't have, was strong leadership. They had all the talent in the world. They just didn't have the leadership to put it all together, or the cultural development to put it all together.
I mean, they did have a leader, but they didn't realize he was a leader until after they got rid of him, and he just retired 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Eric Hosmer was the leader of that team. Granted, he was terrible offensively, but he was that veteran leader of that team, which is, when you look at his, not last year, but 2022, which was his final year in San Diego, there's a reason why San Diego made it as far as they did that season. And that's because Eric Hosmer took a lot of those younger players under his wing when they got close to the postseason and basically said, we need to be on the same page. We need to be at this level to be here. That was literally right after Fernando Tatis got suspended. He basically got all the team together and said, we can't be doing stupid stuff anymore. We have the talent to do something special. We need to just believe in ourselves and get here. And there's no surprise that San Diego struggled last year after they got rid of Hosmer.
And that's the same thing for us. Michael Brantley, I was really sad to see him retire because he was a huge – good Lord, Amber Alert's like a champ. He was such a strong lead. And even if you put your phone on silent, the Amber Alert doesn't care. It's going to make it loud anyway. But Michael Brantley was a huge, huge leader for the Astros and Philly guy. He you know this better than anybody. When we were going to Philadelphia, we were you guys were up on us. You guys were kicking our tail, and we went.
That one guy, that was the one pitcher that was tipping his pitches.
Yeah.
That's like kind of.
But Brantley,
if you're going to be ready for it, I mean, they still had to hit him, and they rocked him, but.
But Brantley's the one that took them in the clubhouse when they first got to Philadelphia. Before they played the first game of that 3-game series, Brantley put them in that locker room and said, "Look, we are not playing Astros baseball. We're not." And he got that whole team back in mode again. And then we went on to win the series. But I really think Michael Brantley was, and he didn't get the MVP, but I thought he should have got it just because of the leadership aspect that he got that team back on point. And you need that strong leader in your clubhouse.
Oh, I agree. And I like that's why I kind of like how the Phillies team is kind of developed. I feel that if, depending on pitching, and I need my pitchers to not let up 6 runs. I think that this team is built to win games 7-4, 7-5. And I felt that it's always been built that way. So ultimately, I want to make sure that I have inning eaters in the beginning, good starting pitching, obviously, but inning eaters in the beginning, and just a guy that can close the door, and that's It's easier said than done.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, I want to say a special hello to Miss Freebird. I know your son's down there at the airport, but thanks for coming on the show and hanging out with us.
There you go. A blustery wet. That's kind of what I figured. It was going to rain because he's anything to try to keep him here is what's going to happen.
I mean, I will take the rain right now because it was 71 degrees and sunny in Wisconsin yesterday. Today it's 19 and snowing.
Oh, Jesus. But don't you
love it when that happens, that 60-degree swing?
Oh, yeah, and then it's going to do the same thing this week, and it's going to be in the 40s tomorrow, then the 60s all week, and then it goes from 60 to 31 again on Monday. I'm like, I can't handle this crap.
Like, how much snow are you getting?
I mean, it was only like an inch or two, which isn't bad. It's just the fact that it was dropping like 5 degrees an hour, or 5 degrees like every half hour overnight. It's just like, holy shit.
Hey, look, you have the option to move. I don't want to hear your crazy crying. That's why I moved. I got tired of doing the ice scraping and the snow. I said, you know what? This is for the birds, man. I'm going back home.
And you're in Wisconsin, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. What letter road?
What do you mean?
Why do you guys use letters for your roads up there?
Well, I was on 4th Street.
Heck if I know. We got County Road N, and then we got Highway 41 and Highway U. I don't know. Maybe we run
Highway U. Highway U. That's what I was asking. It's.
I think we have.
Yeah, you go there, and all of a sudden it goes from numbers to letters and such like that. It becomes a whole different thing. They can't do anything like normal people up there. We're not going to name this route a number. It's the HZ or the A or the B.
All the letters are the country roads. It's like all the country highways are like Highway H, Highway Z. So I think they're like,
County Road P.
We're just going to use the Country Road H.
Yep. County Road P. I'll never forget.
There you go. That's
there we go. And a tractor in the middle of the road as you're trying to go to work, and you're just waiting for one of them to go to the left or the right, so I can go down the middle.
And now we've gotten really creative. So now we have Highway 41, which is our main highway that goes down like through Illinois and everything. And then we have 441, which is a highway that takes you like up through Green Bay heading north. But then we have another highway that's Highway 96 if you go west. But if you go east, it's 00. Same highway, but one half of the highway is 96. The other half is 00. I'm like, can we not just come to a consensus agreement? It's Highway 96 here or what?
Wisconsin.
No, why do that? Why do that? You're in Wisconsin. The world is a different place. So I actually did travel around in Wisconsin for a little bit. I wound up in Green Bay. I came across I had to go through the UP to get to Green Bay because back then when I was traveling around the country installing computer systems from Kmart, I used MapQuest, and MapQuest showed a line going across Lake Michigan. So I mean, we're driving around, so we think that there's a bridge or something. No, it's a ferry.
Yep.
And the ferry, we got there. Yeah, but we were there in October, and they stopped the last ferry is October 1st. So we had made a decision. We could go up or down to go over there, and we decided to go up. So I did the Saginaw Bridge, or is that what it's called? The Mackinac Bridge?
Mackinac Island Bridge, I believe.
Yeah, and I tell you, that bridge is an amazing bridge to cross. There was the wind was so strong it pressurized the cabin in the truck. I'm like, wow, it doesn't even feel like there's any wind in here. Let's see what happens. I put the other window down. We flew across 3 lanes of traffic. It was great. There was no traffic, but we were on the bridge, and the bridge almost like blew us off because it was like all of a sudden there was a tornado in the car. I learned a little bit about air pressure that day.
Well, I'll tell you this. For a town like Sheboygan, and Dustin, I know you're in Wisconsin. You know Sheboygan real well. Sheboygan has a lot of sports history tied to it that isn't really widely known. I told you, Red Auerbach coached games at the Sheboygan Armory, and then the MLB actually had the St. Louis Cardinals and the Cincinnati Reds played an exhibition game in Sheboygan. There's a lot of really good history, sports history, in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Believe it or not.
They still use that field for baseball too for the American Legion season down there.
Oh, do they really?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. A little history you never heard
about. Yeah, exactly. A little bit of sports history from Wisconsin. But you're not a Green Bay Packers fan. You're a Bears fan?
No. I am a Viking fan because my cousin actually went to high school with Randy Moss. And when they were in high school together, my cousin tells me the story all the time. Randy Moss was the reason why he quit playing football. Because my cousin was like a 6'2", 190-pound, 2.5-star cornerback in high school. Then Randy Moss shows up and basically it makes my cousin look like a middle schooler on a high school field. He's like, yeah, we're done here. So, yeah, I might basically said whoever drafts Randy Moss, that's who I'm going to end up following, and he went to Minnesota.
Huh.
There you go. Well,
if anybody, Pax, let me ask you this. So, Red Auerbach, he's the second winningest coach in NBA history, right behind, what's his name? Not Pat Riley, the other one, the one that's Chicago Bulls, Phil Jackson. So Phil Jackson is the winningest. The second winningest is Red Auerbach. Do you know the one place that he said he could never win a single game?
The Armory.
The Oregon Armory. Isn't that crazy? And this is like the winningest coach, second winningest coach in basketball history.
I think he's 0-9 there or 0-10 there, I believe, too. He's played quite a bit of games there.
Oh, yeah. Never could win a game there.
See, we're not at Rocky yet. We are not at Rocky yet, but it's coming. It's coming.
Yet.
We were at Wisconsin sports history, which is really fascinating. I guess over in Saginaw, I've been to Oconomowoc.
Oconomowoc.
Yeah. It depends on which part of the state you're from. See, this is what happens when you travel around the world.
No, you need to watch. You need to go on YouTube and watch. I'll send you the video later when I can remember the guy's name. But this is a guy that's from like Florida. He's never traveled like north of Indiana, and they put him through the Wisconsin city name test. Gave him the hardest names like Oconomowoc and like all these super hard names that we know how to pronounce. There, he just looks at the city, Oconomowoc, Oconomowoc. And I'm like, nope, we're good.
Well, you know what? Hey, those Indian names are hard because that's what Wisconsin is, Indian and German. I mean, every damn city is hard to pronounce. It really is. Except for Sheboygan. I mean, that was always a pretty simple one to, or Oshkosh. Yeah. That was a pretty simple
one.
Or Milwaukee. Milwaukee's an easy one to do. But everybody knew that from Laverne and Shirley. So.
God, I forgot about Laverne and Shirley.
See, we got to bring in the Laverne and Shirley reference. No Stallone today. We're going old school 70s sitcoms.
Yeah, so there you get Laverne and Shirley. And let's not forget our best friend Lenny and Squiggy. God, Lenny and Squiggy.
Exactly. See, we're of that age. Stat guy, you look like you're just too young to know what we're talking about.
I'm younger than you guys, but not that young.
Got you. Well. Do you remember Laverne and Shirley?
I've watched it. I just never. I mean, obviously it's not on anymore, but I've watched it on like TV Land and AMC and some of those older channels.
See that TV Land? That's where people who want to know what the 70s look like, they go to places like TV Land.
Yeah, they do.
And they go back in the nostalgic world.
Yeah, well, bro, watch the Brady Bunch. You watch, reruns of the Brady Bunch.
My favorite show is on TV Land, and I don't even consider it that old yet. So,
what, the Brady Bunch?
Fresh Prince.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yep, that's on TV Land now because it's officially 30 years old. But I grew up on watching that show pretty much since I was like 6-7 years old.
I think I was in high school.
I had stuff like Family Ties and all those different types of television shows. Like I was more 80s television. And I always watched sports really more than anything else. But there was like Family Ties and Family Matters, I guess.
I love that damn show. That's back when Mr. T was Mr. T before Mr. T was Mr. T and Rocky.
Right. Well, I was going to say the A-Team. A-Team was great.
I wanted that band so bad.
MacGyver.
Yeah, Paul MacGyver. Yeah.
Gilligan's Island is
MacGruber.
Who's the boss? See, I loved Alyssa Milano in the beginning. Yeah, like she was definitely but that was
she's a hottie.
See, the funny thing is
she still is a hottie.
The funny thing is you guys are talking about these kind of shows, and then when it comes to like James Bond, I love the 60s and 70s James Bond movies over any of the new ones. I will watch the Sean Connery James Bond movies before I will watch any of the new ones.
But that's because the storylines were always better.
I just think it's more like the way the movie should be, like the way Pierce Brosnan and Daniel Craig have done it now. Like I think it's too, not necessarily futuristic, but it's too realistic in terms of if you were a spy versus like Sean Connery. Those movies legitimately looked like he was a spy. It wasn't anything over the top. It was just kind of the typical things you would expect a spy to go through.
Yeah, I could go with that. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I like them. I like them all, actually. I feel that as it gets older, as it evolves, it kind of still has a lot of that cool stuff too, especially the recent ones. I kind of felt like the Pierce Brosnan looked a little fake and stuff like that. When you start blowing up bases and stuff like that by yourself, it becomes really
Yeah.
not
Mhm.
real.
No, you
You
know
know what
what
I
I don't
mean? You're
like?
not.
And I don't like the knockoff crap that Tom Cruise did with Mission Impossible and all that. I mean, that's just a whole other level of. I just didn't like. I don't know. Maybe y'all liked. I didn't like.
I've
Any
never
of
even seen a movie. Tell you the
I
truth.
watched one and I vowed to never. And I watched the first one and I didn't watch any more after that. And I was like, no,
I'm
it's
not a
not my
big
cup of tea.
I'm not a big Tom Cruise fan besides his older stuff.
Yeah, but he was pretty
Yeah,
hot.
I mean,
Nicole Kidman was
see,
pretty hot. Days of Thunder though, that was pretty hot.
and
Like
I never saw Days of Thunder.
like
It was
Days of
good.
Never, never.
It was. You know what though? But I thought he did a good job in all the right moves. I thought that was a pretty good.
like Days of Thunder, Jerry Maguire, and Top Gun were like my 3 favorite Tom Cruise movies.
See, and I think Risky Business was probably
Risky Business
better
was
than
good
that.
too. And what
Yeah,
was the
like
other
that
one
kind of
that
put
he
him on the
played in?
that put him on the map, actually.
What was
But
that,
what
Jay?
was the one that he was in when it was Patrick Swayze, him? I think it was maybe Rob Lowe. I think might have been in there when he was, and it was Pony Boy. Remember Pony Boy? Keep It Gold, Pony Boy. When Ralph Macchio and then we're in there. Oh, what was that? Was it Lost Boys? Or that was
No, it wasn't the Lost
He
Boys.
Outside.
he was good. He was good
Outsiders
in
and
Rain. He
Outside
was good in
Boys.
Rain Man too. I guess I've seen Rain Man too. He was good in
Yeah,
that.
Rain Man was good. Rain Man was good. But if you ever
Yeah,
seen Moves, that's also a really good one.
I don't remember that one either.
Yeah, it was
See,
that was back probably like in the that was
well,
like in
we
the
went
early
from television shows to movies, like old style movies. We were at television shows, but I guess that's happened with 007. Either way, I guess we could talk about sports. Like I said, there's not really much going on. So last night I'm at the Flyers game and the lights went out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's always when
that
the
was
lights
exciting.
go out, man. What is
I
That's when you
it,
can
it,
change the name to the Philadelphia Phantoms when that happens.
yeah, well, that's kind of funny. Yeah, so it's like the lights go out, they stop play, and there's enough light that's going on the center ice, but not anywhere else. Like everything just went out. We're all like, well, and like I'm yelling at the goalie and stuff like that. I felt like that was a good day for me. We were getting to Vasilevsky, and of course the lights go out.
Andrea Vasilevsky. It's not as bad as the Indiana Wisconsin game last night.
What happened there?
Fire alarm went off 5 minutes into the game, and you had sprinklers going off inside the building, so the court had water all over the place. They had to evacuate the building because the fire alarms went on, so the game was on like a 65-minute delay because everyone had to get out of the building and they had to wipe up the court.
See, that's fun. That's fun right there. Was that televised? Was that nationally
No,
televised?
I think it was girls. So if it was on Big Ten Network. So I mean, it wasn't like on national.
That would be hysterical to watch, though. I'll start looking for that. Somebody's got that video.
I think someone's got a photo of it too, what the stadium looked like, or what the assembly hall looked like 15 minutes after the alarm got pulled. And there's like one person in the seats, everything else just empty, like COVID again.
Well, I guess he had no sense to get out of the rain. But anyways, so with the so you were talking about earlier, since we're going to keep going about baseball, I want to talk about baseball because it's baseball season. You know what I mean? I understand hockey and basketball is here as well, but it's baseball season. And you're saying that I got these lists. I guess they came from you, Stat Guy, about what the new realignment would be. And so here, let's just to go like this. On the AL East, it would be the Yankees, the Mets, the Toronto Blue Jays, and the Red Sox.
Yep.
And then in the NL East would be the Orioles, the Phillies, the Expos, saying that the Expos from Montreal, I assume.
Yep.
And Pittsburgh would be in that. So Montreal is definitely getting a team.
Montreal. So Montreal is 100% guaranteed to get a team because they pretty much have been guaranteed that for the last 10 years, but they will not bring one team in. The only way they expand is if they bring two teams in at a time. Otherwise, it creates too much of an issue with having a number of teams.
How do you play? How does somebody play?
So they basically told Montreal when Rob Manfred renewed his contract back in 2021 that you guys are getting an expansion team when we expand, but it's not happening until we can get that secondary market to go with you.
Got you. And that's why you're saying Nashville is going to be that second one.
I honestly thought they would go out west. I thought it was going to be Vegas or Portland, but with Oakland now relocating to Vegas, Nashville makes sense just because Nashville's starting to get a lot of that traction because that's kind of the one area of the country that doesn't have baseball. You have Louisville, you have Nashville, you have Charlotte. All of those are three of the top 10 cities in the southeast part of the country, and they don't have a baseball team. One of those markets is going to get it. I thought Charlotte might get it, but it seems like Nashville is the one that is ahead of everybody right now.
Plus, Nashville's more of a destination spot.
Yep, and that I think is the big thing too.
So, but in this realignment, there really isn't going to be an AL or NL anymore.
They're still going to call it an AL NL just because you kind of have to, because you have to have, like when you get to the playoffs, you have to have two conferences. So they're going to call it the AL NL, but they're going to do it a lot more smart now. It's going to be more geographically aligned where every team in your division, like the Blue Jays, Red Sox, Yankees, and Mets, they're all kind of in that upper quadrant of the country. And then Philly, Pittsburgh, same state right next to each other, basically. Montreal's not that far from there, and then Baltimore is not that far from Pennsylvania. So those four teams are kind of going to be grouped into their chunk. And when you look at some of the other divisions, all the California teams are going to be grouped together. Houston, Texas, and Arizona, I believe, they're kind of all grouped together. They're like kind of playing the whole geographic move to kind of cut down on travel, but they want to, I think, bring in some new rivalries for the fans to try to get baseball to kind of get back to where viewership was during the steroid era when viewership was at an all-time high.
Yeah. And it's interesting that the Astros and Rangers are now going to be moved over to the National League on that side of the fence. And I think that's going to be I like it. It's okay. Like I said, it doesn't really matter if you want to call me NL or AL because like Pags, we always said, there really is no difference at this point.
Yeah.
Well, the Astros is one of the teams that have been on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, literally. Yeah. So if we want to go back to the NL and we want to put the Rangers, I like the rivalry between the Astros and the Rangers. You know, it needed to be a rivalry because literally it's 45 South or 45 North that connects our two cities. And I love that. It's great. And even more, so it almost reminds me of a Red River shootout type of thing, but we're not on the Red River, but that type of to bring those two cities rivaling against each other is great.
So, hey, I'm just seeing this right here. Charlotte sells out every AAA game. And the reason probably for that is because of the price point.
And that's another reason why I thought Charlotte would get a team over Nashville is because their AAA stadium is as close to MLB standards as you can get. All they would have to do is add one more level and it becomes MLB standard. All these other stadiums have to add like 20 to 25,000 seats to get it to be MLB standard. Charlotte Knights Stadium's 22,000 right now. MLB standard is 32,000 seats or more, so they would just have to put one more level up there to get it there. It'd be an easy addition to do on that stadium to keep that stadium in place.
I just see Nashville being the better place to go to, just for if nothing else, the economics.
Yeah,
there's more money in Nashville than there is in Charlotte. So baseball is going to make way more money in Nashville than they would Charlotte. Not to say that Charlotte doesn't deserve a team, but I think from a financial standpoint, it would be more beneficial. And like you said, in that part of the region, there really isn't a whole lot. So that would be perfect.
You put a team in Nashville, you're going to attract people from Louisville. You're going to attract people from Charlotte. You're going to attract people from Arkansas, from South Carolina, pretty much all these states that don't have a team where, like, South Carolina probably roots for Atlanta because it's the closest team. But Arkansas is kind of in the middle of nowhere where Missouri is the closest state to Arkansas, so do they root for St. Louis or does Arkansas root for Cincinnati at this point? You throw a team in Nashville, well, now everybody in Arkansas, for the most part, is probably going to be going over to that Nashville side because it's a lot closer drive.
Yeah, but all right. So then I'm going to ask this question: are you really interested in playing, a 13-pack with the White Sox?
It wouldn't be. So they said they're talking. They haven't decided how they would do the schedule yet for if you have a 4-team division. They did say if they go to an 8-team division, because there's also 4 divisions of 8 that are being talked about. So the NL East and the AL East would be grouped into one division, and they would just call that the Eastern Division. And then you would play the other 7 teams, not counting yourself, obviously. You'd play the other 7 teams in your division 10 times each, which makes 70 games. And then the other 92 games would be split between the remaining 24 teams in baseball, which means you would get each team 3 to 4 times. So you would still play every team in the league. It would just be 10 times against your own division and then 1 series against every other team.
I like that, because I like more divisional games because it makes it easier for the divisional teams. If you're like a middle team and you're trying to move up in the standings, it gives you more opportunities to battle and get to the top of your division. So I like that. I like the more divisional games.
I mean, I'm a fan of it too. I like that idea. I like having more divisional games, but if there's more teams in the division, that makes more sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would much rather.
It'd be set up literally the same way it's set up now, as opposed to you're not playing everybody in the National League twice. It would be you play everybody in your division that 10 times, and then the remaining 24 teams are getting 1 3-game set or 1 4-game set, either at your place or their place.
And one thing I like about that as well, and I think really last year really proved it, was, the Rangers and the Astros were so close. And it was literally just a fractional of a game that put Houston where they were and the Rangers where they were. But I think if we had more divisional games with teams that are at the top of the division where they're so close like that, it really gives the true person the opportunity to represent the division rather than, a couple of games and then that's what we got. So I like the more divisional games. I think it's way more competition in the league. And I think you get a more truer sense of who should be the divisional winner versus, the guy who comes in second and, goes that route.
I just look at that. So, I mean, I understand going with the 2 bigger divisions of eight teams. However, I just see one of those divisions, like you're putting the Red Sox. Ultimately, it could be Yankees, Mets, Blue Jays, Red Sox, Phillies, Expos, Orioles, and Pirates in one division. And then putting the Braves in and the Astros, really. Braves, Astros, Rangers, Royals, Nationals, and Nashville, whatever that becomes. I feel like that there's too many different opportunities for how would they do the playoffs in that regard? That becomes the question.
So you would have your 4 winners, obviously. So
that's going in small divisions.
So if you win small divisions, you would have your 4 winners, and then you would have 4 wild cards. So they would go with an 8-team playoff format. Now, if you go with the 2 bigger divisions on each side, you would have your 2 division winners, or whatever you want to call them, your 2 pod winners on each side, which would be the 1 and 2 seed, and then it would kind of be the next 6 best teams. So then it would be the 1 and 2 seed. So the 2 pod winners would have a bye, and then the next best record would be technically the 3 seed. They would play the worst remaining team and just kind of shift it down like that, kind of how the system is right now.
Yeah,
you know what the one thing I like about that is, and I think the NFL shows it best. When they had like teams that were like less than 5 or under 500 getting into the playoffs, I hated that crap. It gives the better teams the option of getting in there versus a team getting in there just because they're the quote unquote divisional leader, even though their record sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I tell you what, let's take a break and we'll come back to and talk about this on the other side here. And I'll make it a little bit easier because that sounds like it's a lot longer of a conversation than just a 10-second rebuke there. Because I kind of like this, but I don't like it. I'm not a big fan because I feel like you got the Phillies, the Yankees, and the Mets all going to go there. And like there's a good chance that 2 of those teams ain't going to make it because of it, because they're beating each other up too much. So, and it's like I would rather spread it out. I like just having 4 teams in the division and playing them a 13 spot, and then doing, like I said, having maybe the other teams where you have you have 2 series, a home and an away series with that other East section, and then the 3 across the board, because that really would equal the same amount.
And on that note,
we're going to take a station identification break, and we will be back in just a few moments. And I mean, you can see right now without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face.
Oh, I'm from Brooklyn.
Hey,
Hey,
guess any.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Sometimes, all you need to change your life is a sign. A sign that says, "Hank, this is the place you've been looking for." And sometimes that sign is an actual sign that's mounted to a building. 1 second, I'm looking at a sign. I know what you're thinking, and no, I don't love B-dubs just because I'm a buffalo with wings. Frankly, that's offensive and reductionist. Cause this place, come on. It's like they took beer and made it into a place and then gave that place sports and chicken wings. And the people, Cuba, the best.
Oh! What the is going on, Marty? This isn't a game. This is trivia.
Yeah, this place is kind of like heaven. You know, without needing to get hit by a bus. Let's go, sports bar.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
So
We are back.
So I did actually pull up how they would do the playoff format while we were on break.
Okay, awesome.
So they would go with a 14-team playoff format. And they would not actually go based off of a winner of each pod. So all 32 teams would be in play. The teams with the two best records out of all 32 of those teams would get the 1 and 2 seed. Best record would go to a first-round bye. So they did a simulation with these 32 teams in play, and the Dodgers finished 105 and 57, and the Braves finished with 103 wins, so they got the top 2 seeds. Dodgers ended up with the number 1 seed and received a bye, but they would play the winner of the 2-7 matchup, which ended up being the Astros and Padres. And then the number 3 seed went to the Brewers, who would play the 6 seed, the Cardinals. And then the number 4 seed would play the 5 seed. And then the same thing on the other side. The Braves, having the second best record, get the number 1 seed and a bye on the other side. And then the same format, they would play the winner of the 2-7, and then you have the 3-6-4-5. So essentially, there would be no real division winner. Where you would just have the 2 best records would get put as the 2-1 seeds on each side of the playoff bracket, and then they would just kind of go record by record after that. The next 2 teams are the 2 seed, 7 seed, 6 seed, 3 seed, so on.
But not reseeding.
Not reseeding, no. So it would just go based off of record. So basically, the 14 best records would make the playoffs, and it would just be top seed or the top 2 records get the 1 seed. The next 2 records get the 2 seed. It would just kind of go off like that.
I like that.
I don't know how they would
Because
Yeah, but you know what I don't like though is that by being the number 1 seed and you're going to play against because really you should be playing the winner of that case against would be the 4-5.
Yeah.
Or the 3-4.
Yeah,
whatever it wound up being.
Which I'm sure they'll make the adjustment later on, but that's just kind of how they have it laid out right now, which I like that idea, but I just don't know how they're going to determine like who goes where. Like obviously each one seed's going to go on one side of the bracket and the other, but then you go with the next two teams. How do you decide who goes where?
Right. And are you going to have a 5-game series? Like I said, initially they were having that 3-game series because you have to make it only a 3-game series. You can't give them too much of a break in the number 1 seed. You want them playing baseball. You know what I mean? So it can only be a 3-game break realistically. So because again, you want to continue to play baseball every day.
I think it would have to be best of 3 that first round, best of 5 the next 2 rounds. I think the World Series would be the only one that's 7 games.
And I'm okay with that. That's fine. That's fine.
No, because I think because it's right now you're playing for the NLCS and the ALCS is 7, and then so it's still gonna be you're still gonna be 8 wins to get
I just think
through the championships.
I just think it'd have to be a best of 3, best of 5, and then the best of 7. Otherwise, you're going into possibly mid-November. Then by the time that World Series is over, if you go best of 3, best of 5, best of 7, best of 7.
I figured like they want to bring it all the way to November 10th.
Yep.
Like I for some reason I feel like that's their cutoff date right now. Like I don't know why, but like November 11th they want to have it's no longer going to be the October Classic. You're going to hear about guys like Mr. November and stuff.
October. Yeah, it's like a dual month.
However, the season ends kind of early this year because it does end on the 29th.
Yeah,
29th of September
starts March 28th though.
Right. So I mean, they're moving it up earlier. They're trying to start earlier, I guess, because they see this coming, and they're thinking that the month of October is going to be all baseball. It's got to be all that. So you got to have the 3 games. So if you're ending on the 29th, you have 1 day off on the 30th, first, second, and third. If it goes for that, if you're going to go full amount there, because then everybody's going to have 1 more day off at least.
I'm even okay with giving them a couple days off. Like if the season ends the 29th, go 3, 4, 5. Give them like 3 days off in case like one team's on the West Coast and they have to get out to the East Coast or whatever. Give them like 3 days off and do like 3, 4, 5 for that first round, and then give them the 6th and the 7th off. And then
then the number 1, that's the problem. The number 1 seed is the one that winds up getting screwed there because now they're not playing baseball for 10 days. So it just can't happen that way. It becomes almost a disadvantage for you to try to get the number 1 seed, which is part of the reason on why you're winning these games in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's like you wanted to have a little bit of what's going on, but I feel like that the Phillies specifically, it's better for them not to have that bye. It's better for them not to do it because you get into the rhythm, and those first couple games actually get you in the way that you're going to progress in the playoffs.
Yeah.
If you're a little sketchy in the first games, you're usually going to be sketchy in the next, and you don't know if that's going to be good enough. But if you get
I've never liked my team having a whole lot of time off in the playoffs. I mean, I want to keep them playing to keep that momentum and that rhythm going. Let me ask: are we overthinking it? Should baseball just say, look, the top 8 teams out of the AL, top 8 teams out of the NL, structure it that way, and then have them go that direction? Or
I've been
saying this as a collective unit.
I've been saying this since the COVID playoffs. Baseball should have stuck with that 8-team format that they had during the COVID playoffs. And when they went to the best of 3, you could easily do best of 3, best of 5, best of 5, best of 7. Because when they went with that 8-team playoff during the COVID year, that was some of the best playoff baseball we've ever seen. Because you had 8 seeds beating the 8 seeds beating the 1 seed. You had 7 seeds beating the 2 seed. It's because everybody was on a level playing field. Once that season ended, everybody had 2 days off, and then that first series started, and it all became a matchup of pitching. You could have had the best offense up against the worst offense. But if that worst offense had a better pitching staff, that's what made the biggest difference. And I think that's what baseball should continue to do with, because that's when I think their playoff format worked perfectly. Because this is how I feel. I don't know how you guys feel. Baseball plays.
I just don't think we have to overly complicate it.
No.
I think it should be best 8.
Yep. Baseball plays the most games of any sport, but yet they have the fewest playoff teams. That does not make sense to me.
I agree with that. I can understand.
It used to be 4 teams, and then they went to 5 teams with the 2 wild cards playing each other. Now it's 6, but everybody else has 7 or 8, and they play half as many games, if even like less than that.
Well, I mean, and that's why they're still trying to move it back and all this other stuff so that they can get more days off in between because they're trying to give everybody 4 days off a month now and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It's like that's part of the reason why they have to move it so much. I The other thing about that year though was that they only played 48 games. So you were getting everybody at their like summer peak. Yeah,
Right,
and
right.
it's again because
Because
you're around each other
baseball's
for
streaky.
right.
Baseball's streaky. That
It's
momentum.
like
Sometimes like look. Take the Astros for example. I'm using them because that's the best example because they were horrible. Pags. They were horrible at the beginning of the season. And then it literally took all the way to the very end, like literally that last month of baseball, before they became the team that went into the playoffs. Ultimately, they still lost, but it took them a long ass time. And I went through a range of emotions as to whether or not we could even get into the playoffs, at that point. And so I don't like that shortened season because baseball is so streaky. It's ups and downs, hots and colds.
thanks for Stat Guy coming in. We'll see him again tomorrow. I know that he just kind of popped off. He said that he might have to roll. So thanks for coming in today. I appreciate it, and we'll see him again tomorrow. But I mean, there's a 14 team. I just don't like not having to play baseball. Like that's
Right.
like I feel like that's kind of what it is that you don't want to have happen. You go in on a hot streak, into October, and the next thing you know is you're waiting for a team to finish up. So I mean that's
And I like what Robert just said about the Mariners. I mean, I think that's another classic example of a team that went through a lot of hot and cold period. Because there was a point in time, Pags, but that even the Mariners, and Robert will know this. Last year the Mariners were in top spot. That number one spot fluctuated quite a bit before we even got to where we were. Even though the Rangers ultimately proved to be the best team in the division, there's so much that happens over a course of 162 in baseball.
well, I mean, you guys had such an odd playoff series.
We did, man. It was
With
crazy.
them. It was like a very odd series. Like it was,
and that's the one team, Pags. If you said, Jay, who do you fear and Robert, I'm telling you, I'm keeping it real with you. What's the one team you don't want to play in the playoffs? It would have been the Mariners. The Mariners last year, they completely had our number. There was nothing we could do against that team. Literally.
yeah, but you wound up beating them. But I felt that whoever won that 18-inning game, that was going to be the winner of the series. Obviously, because there was.
But I think that right there, though, just take that one scenario where the Mariners didn't make it into the postseason, but they had a really great team that particular time. What would it have looked like?
Well, that was last year.
Yeah, what would that look like had we had more entry-level teams coming in, or not entry-level teams, but just more teams in the playoffs? It's very likely that the Mariners could have made it to the top. Who's to say they could? They were playing at times really good baseball.
Well, I understand that, but at the very end, when they needed to win more games than lose, they lost.
And they did lose. They sure did.
So I mean that's really what happened because it was a 3-car race going right into that end. You know what I mean? It literally went down to the last day. But ultimately Seattle fell back. I mean, because they played Houston and the Rangers, so they played both of those teams to get into the playoffs, and I think they won 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 6 out of those
that
two
nature.
series.
I believe so.
Yeah, so it really they did it to themselves. I was kind of pulling for them because I did think they could make a wave in the playoffs. That if they made all they had to do was make it in, but you got to make it in. And sometimes I guess it became the hiney hole pucker. You start squeezing the bat a little too tight. And ultimately that's a real thing. That is a real thing. So
well, when they do add these expansion teams, and if they do actually do the league alignment like that they're talking about, I wouldn't mind seeing 8 teams on the AL and 8 teams on the NL, and then let's let that side battle it out and see who gets there. I think it's going to be really good for baseball.
Yeah, I mean it's just.
I mean, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I mean, because really, there should be no reason why an 8 seed beats a 1 seed. But I mean, I guess anything can happen in a real series like that. But I mean, what are you going to have, a 3 game series for the first part? You're going to
Yeah.
risk that? Is that what you're doing? You're risking your number 1 seed against an 8 seed that just maybe almost sunk their way out or snuck their way in, and you're going to lose the team that's going to be the number one. I mean, I guess you could do it that way, but
Hey, you know what they
oh,
say, Pags? If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best.
well, I know I understand that, but again, you're putting that 1 seed into a really poor type of situation. I mean, you're giving them, all right, now we got 3 games, 3 games. That's just, I don't know. I feel like good teams win over longer series. So are you going to make it a 7 game series in the very beginning? I don't know about that. I guess you could make it 5, and then you'd be like 5, 5 game series, 5 game series, 7 game series, 7 game series. I just don't trust only a 3 game series
Right.
with the number 1 seed. Like that's just,
I
I
think that
think to
only,
have
but I
to
think
play
that
that
only
is,
applies if the number 1 seed is coming into the playoffs on a cold streak, and they need a couple of days off to regroup themselves, and then come back in on a longer
and
series.
listen, if they're
Like,
your
you know
number
what
one
I'm
seed,
saying?
if you're a number 1 seed and you're going in on a cold streak, then you must have had a fantastic year. But you better figure it out a different way at that point. You know what I
I mean,
mean?
well,
Because
look at it
that's what
like
I'm
that. I
saying.
mean, the Rangers went into the season. They lost at the Astros at the very end. They hit a cold streak. They went into and then they got into the playoffs and did their thing. I mean, they weren't hot going into the playoffs. They got hot in the playoffs, though.
So you're saying that we should talk about Rocky, and how Rocky was an underdog, and I mean,
Cover
let's.
Lane! Let's go!
I it's,
Oh,
I like the underdog story. I just don't like I don't like the thought process attached to knocking the 1 seed out with a 3 game series. You know what I mean? It's like I feel like I would prefer 6 teams or 7 teams. You could do it with the 2-7, only giving the number 1 seed a bye. So you would have, and then it'd be a 7 team playoff. But you have to reseed it and stuff like that. It's just, you know, I don't like the way basketball does stuff, but that's why they got to have it as a 5 game series. They couldn't do best of 3. You had to
yeah.
win 5, so, and then go to 7 game series. I kind of prefer the 7 game series, but you can't have
I just feel
baseball
like
in
if you're the number
December.
1 seed and it's really your year to do it, you're going to do it regardless of a 3, 5, or 7. I mean, what's extra games going to do for you? If you're really the top dog, if you're really the best team out there, if you're really the creme de la creme, 3 games is you're just okay. It's a warm up. It's a warm up for the bigger teams, the fives and
Yeah,
the
but
sevens.
that's not true, because you got to put your number 1 up. So now you are automatically pitching your number 1 and number 2 starter,
Right.
because it's the playoffs. So you sweep them. You win those first 2 games. But now your 1 and 2 guy are now used. So now you got to go into your next playoff series without using your number
Unless
1, 2
unless you
until
put a buffer in there. What if you put a 1 or 2 day buffer
yeah, but
to allow that
again,
guy to come back?
that's not how playoff baseball should be. It's not how it should be. I don't want secondary players out there. I don't want I you know what I want to see my number 3 starter in the 3rd game of the series. I don't want to see him having to start the series because we won. You know what I mean? Yeah, like that's what bad teams have to do. That's why when you're the number 1 team, you get that extra added benefits.
So, but okay, but and okay. So based on what you're saying, let's say you get in the next series, right? The next series would be what, 5 games.
Right.
At some point during that 5 games, though, that number 1 and number 2 starter would come up in the series. You know what I'm
Yes, but
saying?
you're
It
but
may not
a
be at the
number 1
beginning of it,
a
but
number 1 and a number 2 starter in a 5 game series should, maybe the number 1 specifically, but probably the 1 and 2 both could pitch 2 games. Even if it's 1, 2, 3, day off, 1-2, or the opposite way where it's 1-2, day off 1-2-3, like
Yeah.
you should be able to get your number one pitcher specifically, but your number two pitcher possibly two attempts at a win there. And a 7-game series, it's a little different. You can wait to get there because it's
But
a
even,
7-game
in a
series.
5-game, there's going to be a day off that you're going to have to do a travel day on.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but if you have
I
to
think
start
you
with
do
your
get the
number
1 and
3
2 in
pitcher,
there.
if you have to start with your number 3 pitcher, that means he's going to have to pitch twice. And I don't want to start my series with a number 3 pitcher if my number 1 pitcher, because my number 1 pitcher won the last series. You know what I'm saying? If I was the
I can
number
see the
1,
3 and the 4 you're not wanting to start if your rotation wasn't quite as strong. I can see that. But if you're a number 1 seed, typically your 1 through 4 should be fairly good, even if the 3 has to come in and start the series. They should be fairly good.
I'm saying that as the number 1 seed, we shouldn't have to have that unless we're having 7-game series throughout. Like that's what I'm talking about. You can't.
Yeah, I mean, I
You,
understand what you're saying. I got you.
yeah, you'd have to have best of 5, best of 5, best of 5, best of 7, best of 7. That's how it would have to go to make any sense if you're using 1 versus 8. Because
Let me ask you
you
this:
don't want to take a
if
chance.
you're going against that 5-game series, you come off the 3-game series, you're going against a 5-game series, and the manager of the opposing team says, "Okay, they're going to go with their number 3 guy." Do you go with your number 1 guy if you're the opposing team, or maybe do you match them with your number 3 guy because you know you want to keep it competitive and you want your number 1 to go against their number 1? I mean, how would you work that if you're the opposing team?
So ultimately, if usually they would both be in the same situation. So all right, so think of it like this: you have your number 1, and your number 2 go. All right, so they go. There's a day off now because Game 3 is not being played, and then you have another scheduled day off because if you have to go 3 games, you got to go to that next. You're not going to start a new series that next day. But I mean, you
Right.
might. I mean, it is
No,
baseball, but usually
you're
there
going
is
to
a
have
day
that,
off.
you're going to have that rest day off in between series.
Right, but like I'm saying that what I think is like kind of like what baseball's doing now. The 1 and 2 seed get the bye, and then 3, 4, 5, and 6, 3 wild cards and 3 division winners. So the number 3, the worst division, ultimately is, you know, I guess in theory the number 3 seed that they get with the win of the division, and then ultimately 4, 5, and 6, and that's how they play each other. And that I like that, but it can only be a 3-game series for that because you didn't earn the fact to get the bye. But you can't have your guys not play a series for a week. Can't happen that way.
Yeah.
So if
I
you didn't win,
would not want the Astros to go a whole week without playing baseball because them names are coming in cold. And I don't like that.
well, not
I
only
like
that, I
going
mean,
to a series cold.
again, what showed that was when the Colorado Rockies, they went on that monster winning streak and they won. They swept, and then the Red Sox took forever. They were going 6 and 7 games to get to the World Series. So there was such a disparity in the timetable that it was like they were waiting. They're sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. So game 7, they finally win it, the Red Sox. And at that point, it had been like 6 days that they hadn't played baseball
Yeah.
in Colorado,
Yeah.
which is cold.
Yeah.
So you're not even going outside to play baseball a lot. And that's why, I mean, there's no wonder that the Red Sox just swept them.
Yeah,
They weren't ready to play.
ugly. So would you rather it be then in this case, based on everything you just said, would you rather have it be a 6-team on the AL side, a 6-team on the NL side? Is that the amount of teams that you would want going into the playoffs?
I think so. You could do it with 7. You can make it so that only the best gets the bye.
Because that's what I want, the best.
Yeah, but like I
Yeah.
said, the only the best gets the bye. And if you're the number 2 seed, but at that
Right.
point, like I said, the way that they would have it, should be 1 through 16. You know what I mean? So the
Yeah.
1 and the 2 seeds get the bye, and that's it. Just those top 2 tiers, and then 3 play, 16 and 4 play 15 and 5 play, and then ultimately you have it as a bracket.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
I'm
that
right there with you. Yeah, and I totally get it.
then
And
you
I would
can't
definitely
reseed is the
support.
problem.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. You can't play reseeding games like that.
No, I totally get it. And I think seven teams on each side would be good. It gives that, if you got 7 teams, you're going to have the creme de la creme of baseball on each side of the ball battling out for that championship. And sometimes
Right.
that number 7 team, it just gives them the opportunity to try to see it with what they have makes it. And if they don't, then they don't have a leg to stand on or cry about why they weren't there.
Well, yeah, but that's when you have potential of having a bad baseball team. Because if you have one conference so much better than the others,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You're going to
Mhm.
have a bad baseball team going in as that number 7 seed. Typically, and we've seen that at the number 6 seed, it's typically 88 to 90 wins. That means you had a good enough season to be able to be 8 or 10 games over 500. Comes out to
Yeah.
be like 12 games over 500, really, at 88 wins. So
So did you like
that
what
makes
Stat Guy was saying a minute ago when he said that it was going to be the top 14, 16, whatever it was, teams across the board, AL and
well,
NL?
that's why when you do it that way, you can't reseed. You're not able to reseed because ultimately if 3 is
Right,
going up against 16, it becomes like you're right, it becomes more like March Madness baseball. That you
right,
once you've won the series, you're moving on, but it's got to mesh right. You're trying not to have the number 1 seeds go, but you don't want 1 versus 3 in the
right,
second round. You know what I mean? That means you got to have like 1 versus 6 or something like that, because ultimately you figure that if either team wins, number 1 seed should still smoke them.
right.
But you can't have it as a 3-game series. It's got to be a 5-game series. Whoever wins that first 3-game series makes sense to make that, because you want that over quick because you don't want these other teams sitting for too long. Just
Good
my
point.
opinion.
No, I mean, and again, I think both things to make. I think you can make a case for both. Whether you had the top 14 teams across and reseed it that way, I mean, you can make that work. Or if you just had, like you said, the top 7 of each side, and then go that direction. I think probably the top 7 of each side to me would make better sense. But
Yeah, and then like I said, because it just at that point it's still 10 wins or 12 wins to win that and to win it. You know what I mean? Because that's really what you're counting. You're counting the wins. If you're in the wild card, it's 12 wins. If you're not, if you get the number 1 seed, it's 10 wins. 3, 4, 4.
since we're on the subject of baseball, what do you think the outlook is for Yamamoto out there in the Dodger world? What if you had to put a prediction on it? If you're betting and doing stat lines, what is your theory of Yamamoto going out there and being the guy that everybody has talked about him being for the Dodgers?
I think he's going to have a good season this year. I think it's going to probably be, everybody deals with pressure a little differently, and his pressure is going to be in a different language. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
that is, it's not the distraction for the rest of the team.
Right.
So ultimately, I think that he's going to wind up having a good season. And plus, he's got Otani there too. So it's like they're both. I mean, and what does he do in his very first at bat? Just hit a home run. You know what I mean? It's like it's
Yeah.
so it's going to be a little bit different because they're going to have each other
Right.
to kind of do that. And that's why I feel like he went there more than anything else. That they have
It was his
the
comfort zone. He had somebody
yeah.
else he felt comfortable with. Let me ask you this though. Otani's been in the league for a hot minute now. I mean, this is his first rodeo, so he can adapt very super easily, pitcher and hitter, because he knows the gamut. He knows the whole routine. He's already settled in, right? Different team, but he's settled in. Yamamoto is literally coming here for the first time ever to play American baseball. And I'm asking specifically because now that they have this shortened season, or not shortened season, but shortened spring training, how is that going to affect him at a chemistry level with the catcher that's going to be calling the game, how do they develop their chemistry in such a short period of time in terms of his success?
You know what? It just becomes a matter of, being in sync with your pitcher. I mean, listen, they have mechanics now to make sure that you're not you can't steal a sign. They
Right.
have all that stuff. So it's, hey, this is fastball, this is curve, this is whatever. You don't need to speak the same language. It's and how does it like because you don't want to go out to the mounds. You don't understand what you're doing, what each other is talking about. Now I got to
Mhm.
imagine that Ichiro understands, not Ichiro, but Otani understands English just fine. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just there is a sense of uh confidence that comes with the fact that you feel like that nobody understands you. You know what I mean?
Right.
That you're like, it's like, I could say whatever I want to under my breath and nobody's going to even understand what the hell it is that I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
I do. I do.
yeah, so there is some of that occurs. Like I said, I mean, a good pitcher's a good pitcher. You know what I mean? And a good pitch, you know, he's coming to a professional team. He's getting paid a lot of money to be here.
A lot. And
So
I'm gonna assume that the Dodgers scouting team has done their work enough on him to know if he can or cannot translate to the American baseball realm, right? So,
there would not have offered the contract. There's a reason why you only hear about one or two guys coming over and it's such a big deal because you have to have that type of stuff. And he did have that type of stuff over there. You know what I mean? So when you're doing that well in a professional situation, I mean that's really what it is. That's professional baseball. It's I can't imagine why they don't have more people coming over because it doesn't translate 100%. That's like AAA plus.
right. I think for me with a guy like Yamamoto, never having pitched in American baseball, so it's not a whole lot of scouting reports on him unless you go to the Japan League or whatever and do your looks there. But I gotta imagine, his first year. I gotta imagine his first year would be easier than possibly his second year when people have that first year we're filling him out, we're getting to know him, so forth. Second year, okay, now is the year we know this guy, we've seen him enough, and we can adjust to him. So for me with Yamamoto, it won't be so much the first year with him. It's going to be that second year and see how he goes on that second year.
Yeah, I feel like that the first half of this year is going to be good. That ultimately, if he was going to, it's going to take him a minute to figure out. You got to get some tape on the guy. You know what I mean? So you're going to get your tape against him. Some of these teams are only going to face him once, but division's going to be able to see him over and over and over again.
Oh
So you're
yeah.
going to get the tape on it pretty quickly, and it takes about really for him to come here and get comfortable and you start seeing the velocity in a real sense. I figure you're going to need about 3 or 4 months of tape on him. So in August, look to find it. That's where they may get to him a little bit. It's the
Right.
dog days of summer. It gets tiring for him too. That he's going to give up some runs and stuff like that. It becomes a matter of how quickly you get your confidence back during those times. Because ultimately every pitcher will have a bad outing. And when he has his first one, it's going to be how he rebounds from that. But I think until he gets that point, and it may happen early, it may happen like he may go 12-1, you know what I mean, stuff like that, or the record doesn't even matter. He might be only giving up a 2 ERA. That's really what I care about. I could care less if you're
Right.
winning or losing the game. If my team can't hit, that's not my problem. A little bit, you know what I mean. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that they don't score some runs, and that lineup should. If they lose a game 3-2, that's the offense fault over there in LA. Just like
Mhm.
the Phillies got to score. I feel like that they got to score at least 5 runs. Realistically, I got them at scoring 7 runs. 7 runs a game because that's the number. If you want to beat the Phillies, score 7. You're going to because it's going to take that much
Right.
unless they ain't hitting the ball.
Well, that's
You know
true.
what I mean?
So we talked about we talked about this even the last show with how much money we were talking about small market versus big market teams not spending a lot versus teams who have spent everything in the cupboards. The New York Mets, we saw how much of a disaster it was with all the money that they spent. Now you got the Dodgers spending over $1 billion for 3 guys. Was it 1.3 billion, I think, for 3 guys? How do you think that's going to translate for the Dodgers this year? Obviously, we expect them to be, top creme de la creme, but all that money and all that talent, how do you foresee their season if you were a betting man?
I don't think it matters the money. And we think of $1.3 billion as a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. But I tell you, they already made that money back in jersey sales over there in Japan.
Right.
So
Yeah.
let's be for real there. Japan is a Dodgers fan right now.
Yeah.
So that's just the way it is. So I can imagine that they've already made that money back.
I don't even mean it from that aspect, because God knows, man, when Yao Ming came here, the Rockets were just, getting hand over fist in China. So I understand that aspect. I'm just saying they spent all this money for these 3 guys, and the rest of the team, they really didn't do too much. It was really just around those 3 guys that they brought in versus last year, because, Clayton Kershaw, we know how he does with injuries, and, Urias with his issues that he's had over the season. And then they got the other guy, Dustin May. I don't know if he's 100% ready, but or what his issue is. I know he went down with injury last season and they lost him for the whole season. How do you look at the Dodgers as a whole team and in terms of being competitive? Do you think they're going to be the World Series favorites, or do they have a lot of work to do to get there?
No, I think that right now that they're probably the World Series favorites. I can't imagine, I can't see anybody beating them, right now. At least on paper is kind of what I'm getting at. I think that anybody's beatable. You know what I mean? And like I
Yeah,
said,
absolutely.
other teams' heads. For some reason or another, the Phillies love going to Los Angeles and playing the Dodgers.
Right.
For the years we've had there, I feel like we've had their number, and it's. Does a one pitcher make a difference? Yeah. One hitter make a difference? Yeah. But, every time Otani came to Philadelphia, they got beat. You know what I mean? So he hasn't beaten Philadelphia yet. So I hope that continues, but this is the Dodgers. It's
I
not
bet
going
you
to
do.
up against Otani.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
ultimately, I think that they're going to be a 100+ win team. So, and ultimately, this is baseball. You're going to win 60, you're going to lose 60. It's what happens with those other 40 that determines how good of a baseball team you are. And ultimately, if you are cutting into that 60, if you're only going to lose like 57, 56, 55, you better make sure that you have the type of team that can put it into the next gear, because that's the hardest thing to happen in baseball. And the Dodgers do that all the time. They get in there, but they can't shift gears. They had such a good season,
Right.
but they can't ever
Right.
find that next gear, because ultimately, I call it again. I call it the hiney hole pucker. You start squeezing the bat a little bit. You start getting a little bit of adversity because you ain't got nothing but those 5 games or those 7 games. That's why I'm saying you can't have a 3-game series come down for a number 1 seed. A team that won 100 games should not have to play a 3-game series. Now, it's possible. It's possible. I mean, you had that one year where both the Dodgers and the Giants won over 100 games. So
Yeah.
that just tells me that everybody else in baseball stunk. But the Giants got that weekend off. The Dodgers kept playing, and the Dodgers spanked them when it came against the Giants.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've often said, the biggest acquisition that meant the most to the team outside of the players themselves was Bruce Bochy over there with the Rangers. I mean, that was just the right guy to bring into that team, and he really put that team back together and got them where they need to be.
Robert, that wound up being denied. That's not happening the way that they reported that. It wound up the state of California was like, no, 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 no. It's not how this works. You get to pay your taxes now. So you're going to pay the money on the taxes now, as if what your contract states, not the way that you're deferring it. So you can decide to do that or not decide to do that. So it's not like they got away with anything on that. At least
And
That's kind of how that worked out. Like one way or another, somebody's paying that tax on that contract.
Somebody got to pay it. You're not
Yeah.
just deferring all that for no reason. But but when you look at the Rangers, now they're getting DeGrom back from injury. They're gonna have a full accoutrement of staff. What is your expectation for the Rangers? I mean, do you see a repeat for those guys? Because honestly, they haven't lost anything.
Yeah, but I didn't think that they were such a great team. DeGrom coming back, like that's kind of just like saying, okay, let's until he gets hurt again, because that's what he's
Right.
going to get hurt again, and DeGrom is the type of pitcher that he's old enough now where he probably is not going to go 8 innings.
I would agree with
and-
that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so he's going to be 7 inning guy,
I would
which
probably
is
be 5 inning guy.
no,
honestly.
no, he's going to go 7. He can go through the third time through the batting order. That being said, what I feel like pitchers like that do is that they are able to get the batter focused so that when these relief pitchers come in, all of a sudden they can see the ball much, much, much better. And that's why they have such bad records. That's why DeGrom doesn't win more than he loses. Because
Right.
once he leaves, those because you're going up against DeGrom, you're just a lot more focused. So when you got DeGrom, then you got everybody else. And then everybody else doesn't do as well. So that's why DeGrom loses a lot of the games, or they lose it for him. He may not get decisions, or
Right.
like he'll give up 2 or 3 runs, and that team loses. The team loses 3-2 or 3-1. You know what I mean? But I don't think
I'm
DeGrom
hearing
is
you.
the playoff pitcher because he
You know,
doesn't make it that long.
And that's true. You're right. But even when they lost him, though, I mean, they still went on and played great baseball with the guys that they had there, in house. I mean, they were a damn hard team to beat. What I'm saying? Like even without him.
Yeah, but I also look at the travel, the way to go. I mean, they had to get through Houston, and they
Right.
played Houston tough all year round, all
Yeah.
year long. So that was they kind of had your number this past year. Like that's kind of
Yeah.
what it was. The fact that uh, nobody could win a home game is ridiculous to me. In that
Right.
series, like
That was exactly right. I mean, you're right. And me and you talked about it. I said, God forbid, if it had been the Rangers winning the division, which I kind of now I wish they had won the division, and us being the wild card, it could have been us against the damn Diamondbacks, be honest
the
with you.
Rangers did win the division, didn't they?
No, Houston won it. That's why we had home field advantage, which ultimately was our disparaging thing, right? Because we lost 4-3 in the series
Right, because you couldn't win a game at home.
all day.
So,
Unfortunately, God, I hope they
however,
do.
when the Rangers went up 2-0,
Yeah.
and then you guys came back 3, and made it 3-2 at their house to come
Yeah.
back and still not win a game, I mean, that's
It's
coaching.
an issue, and I really hope Dusty's not there now. Now we got this new guy, Esperado, or whatever his name is. He came off the bench, and now he's our new bench or our new manager. I'm kind of curious to see where he's going to take the team from here on out. So we'll see if that culture continues or what. But I don't know, Pax. It's gonna be good to see, man. Honestly, I think at the end of the day, I think we're looking for some good baseball. My question is, now that they're tweaking the pitch clock yet again from 20 to 18, I know we talked about this. What do you think the effect will be on the pitching staff or the hitting staff? Like, who's going to have the advantage, or how do you see this all playing out going into the season?
Yeah, just like baseball. When something works, let's fix it some more. I really don't like it. Do I think that there's going to be more injuries because of it? No. I think it's starting to be a little bit of a disparate. Like why you got the times down. You had the games under 3 hours. There was the anomaly that went long. But ultimately that meant because the batters were batting. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
never bad because of, you know, good defense. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's doesn't go long because of that. It goes long because the batters are hitting the pitchers. So ultimately, there's going to be some of those games that go 3 hours, but 2 seconds off of every pitch, I guess, it's just all of a sudden everything's now raced.
Right.
So all right, yeah, I'm going to go try to take my lead. You know what I mean? It's like everything is trying to get a little rushed here, and I'm not a big fan of rushing it all. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like give him the 20 seconds. I get it. He's got an extra couple of seconds. I guess they realize or they feel that it just doesn't matter. You know, but
Yeah.
pitchers are going to. We'll find out if pitchers start getting hurt out of the stretch because that's
And
really what.
that's kind of where I was going to go with that, because here's the thing, Patty, like I know, like everybody else knows, the difference between baseball and every other sport is routines, rituals. That sport is so on a ritual. It's so on a routine. It's stupid. And when you start putting a time limit on something, they can't do what they need to do with the batting gloves because, they always do that thing with the batting gloves, or they can't get the dirt, or they can't look left, they can't look right. They can't. And when you're a pitcher, you're used to getting into a certain rhythm, and now your rhythm it's either being rushed or whatever. I don't like it. I think, I understand they want to make baseball a faster game. I get that. And I guess obviously it's better for attendance and viewership, but it's such a ritualistic game. And they really change a lot when they start putting that time clock pressure on those rituals,
Well, and that's, I get it. Again, I thought 20 seconds worked. You know what I mean? I think that they started to, I really believe they started to, uh, they had it right. They got it right. Like I actually wanted it a little bit longer. I wanted
Right.
it to 18 seconds for the batter.
Yeah.
Like let's okay, here it is. Instead of 15, you got 18 seconds and 20 seconds. I thought that you want a little bit of you want to be able to get the right call or whatever, but 15 was fine. I could live with that. I don't know. The fact that it went down to 18 seconds, if I hope that they make the rule change back if they see that it's not working.
Right. Let me ask you
So,
one other thing based on the whole time clock thing. And obviously baseball is strategy, right? The pitcher's trying to figure out the batter. The batter's trying to figure out the pitcher in terms of what's coming next down the pipe. Is going to be in, out, whatever. Now that they have this time clock on there, how much does that mess up their strategic thinking, right? Because they don't have as much time to think about what pitcher's coming next or what have you, or if you're the pitcher, what you're going to throw next even. Or do you think that even matters, really?
yeah, I think when it comes to the strategy, like those are, and that's it's like I think of different mound visits. You have your cards now. They have these cards that they say, okay, I want to pitch it to this guy. I want to pitch to this guy. I mean, it's funny because some of the catchers even have like the football quarterback, thing, so
I've
they can
seen
figure
that.
out
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
that they can kind of see what's going on. you know, Realistically, you could probably have something in your ear and have the coaches kind of talk to you about it through it. You know what I mean? So if you
Mhm.
wanted to say like, "Hey, this is how I want to do it," I mean, there's so many different ways that this could happen nowadays because that's the way technology is that we wouldn't even know. You know what I mean? But
I'm
there
really
again,
surprised
that
they haven't gotten there to that point, to be honest with you, where you have a little earpiece in where you and the head coach or you and the pitching coach, can talk back and forth or hear the instructions, with things
right,
coming in on how they want to do it,
exactly. So that's I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's happened. Hey, listen, Houston knows a lot about that. We're banging trash cans and doing it like
Yeah,
Morse
I
code
knew I
and
was
stuff
opening
like that.
that up for discussion.
But ultimately, see, the only thing that I had a problem with is when he hit that home run. He said, "Don't take my shirt off because everybody will see the friggin' stimulation pad." You know what I mean? He still had to hit the ball. You could
Look, he
still
was
say,
having a muscle spasm. That's all that was. It was massaging his muscle spasm,
"Yeah,
right, while he's on the field. That's all that was. It wasn't anything else,
yeah, don't touch, don't take my shirt off."
Don't touch. Damn it, I hate this
Damn
crap.
cheaters! But you did beat the Dodgers, which I was happy about. So, and the Yankees. I didn't really care that you guys cheated. It's just better that they didn't win either. I get to bust your balls about you guys
When Frankie
cheating
gives me a
and,
hard
and
time
bust their
about
balls about the fact they didn't win it.
yeah, Frankie gives me a hard time about that. But I told Frankie, I was like, when we beat the Phillies, We swept the Yankees. Swept them. And this
Right.
is and what's your excuse now? Now we don't have the buzzers, we don't have the trash cans, but yet we still sweep you. How you like them apples?
Well, I thought the Yankees was a fugazi team in the first place. They weren't the real team. It's just it wasn't completely there.
Yeah.
And it's just like and it kind of manifested last year too. You know what I mean? That they were out of it early. So it's I just kind of feel like the Yankees right now, it's a mentality. It's not a team. It's a mentality
Yeah.
now is the problem. And that's
Robert
they're not
says that Houston will forever be known as the cheaters, and that's okay because Seattle will always be known as the stepchild of the division that never could do a damn thing. So nobody cares about what you think, Robert. But I do love you, Robert, and I don't care.
so I don't think what they did damaged baseball. I don't think so.
Please, are you kidding me? You think that is that what you're saying? Because what about the Black Sox? Did that damage baseball? Did it?
Yeah, well, that did at the time.
No,
I
no,
just
but I'm
said that
saying
it
that
just said
over the long
you can't
haul.
bet on baseball.
Over the long haul. I mean, it tarnished it for that 1 year, but after that, it didn't damage it. Baseball was still baseball. We still go out and pay these guys hundreds of millions of damn dollars. So apparently, it didn't hurt it too bad.
Hey, listen, how many you could take away all of St. Louis's championships that they won when they had everybody on steroids. You could take away every one of. See, that's where the slippery slope goes.
The slippery slope is in every damn sport, every one of them. There's cheating at some level. And if you don't think that, then you got your head in the sand. Now, yes, what are you going to say? Houston got caught with some buzzer beaters. Okay, that's fine. But how much other stuff is going on that you don't know about or don't see on a professional, independent player basis that's cheating the game of baseball? They cheated every single time. God, what
you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Damn it, that's what I that's what I said the first grade time. My first grade teacher caught me looking at Johnny Schlepp's paper, and I said, "Yeah, you're cheating." I said, "Well, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. I'm just trying to get out of the first grade, get to second. Let's go."
I'm sure that, that puts you in the corner. I'm sure.
Oh,
especially in first grade.
Well, my
the
biggest
dunce
thing
hat,
is,
the dunce hat. I could see those old dunce hats, with the point up at the top.
On every report card, it always said, Jay is such an intelligent person. If he would just ever stop talking.
Whatever, we know all about that. And on that note, we're at the top of the hour. So, everybody, tomorrow it will be me and Stat Guy. Jay's got an assignment that he's got to go get done. So we'll get a report from the road. Bo, I hope you get to leave. If not, come on in tomorrow. Yeah, we'll still be here, even though you will not. Hopefully you'll be in Hawaii. If not, hop on in. But everybody else, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll be back tomorrow. Everybody take care. Have a great Tuesday.